Hi guys, I'm Rick. This is RicChat RC and welcome to another video. Today, as you can see, I'm going to talk about my Blade 400. Blade 400, I hear you say, well, that's an outdated model. Well, let me tell you something about this model. I bought it at the end of 2010 and this thing's been flying really well. I'm still flying it now, 2018. I've got over 945 recorded flights. That's how good this thing is. That's how good this thing has been for me anyway. I know lots of people buy stuff, they upgrade it, they hop them up with extra parts, with better parts, then they move on. You know, I've kept this thing nice. I've taken care of it. Have I had any incidences? Of course I have. You know, in 945 flights, I've had my fair share of crashes, of incidences, of servo failures. You might recognize these. No, they're not toothpicks. They're not cigars. They're not cigarettes. Each of these is a main shaft from this helicopter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 major incidences I've had where I have had to change the main shaft because I bent it. Okay, so it's not without its little crashes. Everyone goes through them and I'm no different. This is my bag of main gears, main spur gears. As you can see, I've changed my fair share of these as well. Okay. And the best part about this heli for me is that I've kept it stock. For the first 700 flights, I kept this completely stock. Same gyro, same servos. The only thing I really did change early on were the main blades. They came with the wooden ones. I finally changed them over to the carbon fibre. The other thing I did was I swapped out the Blade 400 landing struts and I put the 500 size landing struts. I wanted that extra height off the ground so the tail section didn't always hit or scrape. But apart from that, as you can see, this thing has been pretty much stock for most of its life. The canopy looks a little bit worse for wear, but don't worry about that. I've been gluing it and taping it, and I guess it is time for a new canopy. I just haven't done that part yet, that's all. I might swap that out eventually. But this helicopter has been really good. I mean, it flies really well. It's only takes 2200 milliamp 3S and I get about 5 minutes flight time out of it. When I first got it, I was using 11 pin. I was using an 11 pin pinion gear, 11 tooth pinion gear, and I was probably down to 4.5 minutes flight time. Then I decided to swap it out and get a 9 pin. I didn't need the head speed. I wanted the endurance. So now I can fly for about 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes, maybe 6 tops. I keep my battery alarm on so it tells me when it's time to land, but I enjoy a good 5-minute flight time with this. Now, I've got to say one thing about the motor. The E-Flite motor on this model has not been good to me. Now, I've read a lot of other feedback on the forums about that motor. Apparently the bearings wear out and I've had my fair share of that. I've been flying and I've seen the vibration of the motor housing while I've been hovering in front of me. And at first, when I saw that happen, I wondered what the heck is going on here. Then I realized the motor was pretty much falling apart in mid-air. So I swapped it out, I bought another one. Look, I can't say they're cheap, but I stuck to the original motor, I put it in. I went through about 2 or 3 of those motors. And I think I was heading for my 4th one in as little as, I don't know, 12 months, 18 months. I may have put on another 100 flights, maybe 150 flights, and I found myself swapping out motors already. So I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy at all. So I decided to buy a cheap motor from one of the internet sites. Actually, I found something on Hobby King, and for about a quarter of the price, even much less, I decided to try a 450 motor, 3800 kilovolts, and I bought two because they were so cheap, and I put it in, and I have to say it's been the best investment I ever made. So for at least 500 or 600 flights out of the 945 that I've gone through, I'm still using the same motor that I bought from Hobby King. I think it cost me $18, maybe $25 at the most. The bearings have lasted. I haven't even used the spare one that I bought as a backup, because at the time I thought, if I buy a motor this cheap, I may as well get two, and because one of them's going to fail. How can a motor last? It's only $25, right? Well, it's lasted. These motors are better than the E-Flite motors. I'm sorry, E-Flite, but the E-Flite motor for the Blade 400, even the Blade 450, I don't think its reliability and durability is worth the money, and I'm not interested in swapping out the bearings and putting Boca bearings in. That's just ridiculous. That's not what the end user is supposed to do. Okay, so I'm using a good motor now. It's lasting, and there's no play, and I don't need to swap it out. It's going really well. The other thing I haven't done is change the servos. For the first 700 flights, I kept the same servos. Now, if you fly normal, or when I say that, if you fly under normal conditions, and normal conditions for me is you don't crash, right? You just fly. You land safely, you take off safely, you don't crash, you don't land heavily. These servos last. I've never stripped a servo flying a maneuver. I've only ever stripped a servo by landing heavily, or obviously by crashing. So I've changed the gearing quite a few times, and after 700 flights, I'd had enough, and I decided to finally swap out the servos. Now, what I did was get some metal gear servos from Hi-Tech. I've been reading a lot about these on all the forums, and I decided I'm going to try them. And so I bought a set, I put them in. I needed to shave a little bit off the side here and there where the previous servos went, but I got them in snug. And I tell you what, these things, the HS65 MG servos, are outstanding. They really are. Look, I've still had a few more incidences with this chopper. I have crashed it, I have landed heavily, and I have not stripped a servo. So much so, this is how strong these servos are. I have discovered that I've actually bent the cyclic push rods that were connected to the servos. That's how strong these servos are. You don't strip the gears, so much so that the push rods end up getting bent. So I take my hat off to this, I take my hat off to this brand, I take my hat off to the durability and reliability of these servos. They're fantastic. The other thing I've read about this chopper, which I've made no changes to, is how weak or average the gyro is. Well, or the gyro is, depending on where you're from. You know, it is weak sometimes. You know, the tail does move unexpectedly sometimes. But I've tuned this Heli to a T. It flies really well. It's dialed in well for me with my radio, using a Spectrum DX6i, and I haven't changed the gyro at all. It served me beautifully, and you know what? I'm heading towards 1,000 flights. That's my goal with this before I retire it. I'm not going to change it. It's doing fine. The only major reconstructive surgery, if you like, that I've had to perform on this is my last crash at about 720 flights, where I had to change the entire tail boom section, had to rebuild the entire tail rotor section. In fact, every time I took something apart because I was ready to swap it out and fix it and realize that this needed changing, that needed changing. I kept finding new things that were broken and needed changing. So that has been my worst accident. And you learn from those. But apart from that, this has been an outstanding chopper. I really like it. You know, it's a 400, it's not a 450, but the 450 is just, you know, some improvements, different motor, same size in the physical dimensions. So this heli is not too small, it's not too large. And the best part about it is it's easy on the pocket. And you don't have to go overboard with all the latest fixtures and fittings. This flies out of the box beautifully. What else can I tell you? It runs on 2200 milliamp 3S. And I've got a box of those when I go flying. They've got 10, 15, 20 or more in there. And I just put one pack after another in there. And with my 9-tooth pinion, I get 5 minutes flight time without even trying. It's fantastic. My next one, when I finally change this, I'm probably going to get a Copter X or a Turret. And I'm going to go fly barrels. So I'm not going to have the paddles anymore. But there's nothing wrong with these. They work beautifully too. Only issue really is when you have a hard knock or you crash, depending on how much you have to fix up here, you end up bending this little wire, this thing here. It can be a bit of a tedious repair to have to bend it back or pull it out of its seesaw mechanism here. But apart from that, this is and was and still is for me a great chopper. I don't know what everyone else thinks of them anymore. Everyone else has probably moved on. But I don't get rid of my stuff that quickly. I make them last. Like I said, 945 recorded flights. And I love it, you know. Much cheaper than taking out the 600 where you got to use 2 6S batteries every time. This is the thing to fly. And it's been perfect for me. So following this little video, I've got some footage to show you, and yeah, it's pretty good. Don't forget at the end when you've finished watching, if you like what you see, please subscribe. Don't forget to leave any comments. I am happy to respond and provide advice. Yeah, it's been a really good RC heli for me, and I've got a 500 and I've got a 600, and I'm going to move on. But I'm going to continue to fly this. I'm going to replace it with a Turret or a Copter X. So let's move over to the flying video. 1, 2, 3.